Guys, so today I'm going to do a live finger and brush swatch video of one of the latest palettes from LORAC. Two of the latest palettes actually. So I have one of their new pro palettes. This is the Noir. And they also came out with a similar sized palette called Soleil, which is more warm toned, as you'll see. And then they came out with two of these smaller palettes, these mini pro palettes. I have the sparkling version, and then finally they came out with a larger 25 pan palette called Meraki. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but anyway, these are the two that I purchased, and I got these from the LORAC website. They are now available on Ulta, so that is an option for you. But we'll go ahead and get into these. So I thought it was kind of interesting that they came out with these new pro palettes. So the Noir and the Soleil are both 18 pan eyeshadow palettes. This smaller one is a 6 pan palette. And I thought I would just quickly show you, if you haven't been a makeup collector for a while, you may not have purchased their earlier LORAC pro palettes, but these were very popular a few years ago. And I purchased these as they came out. So these are a little older now, but these are still available for purchase as well. I heard that they've changed their formula, however, so I was curious how the new formula swatches and behaves on the eyelids. But anyway, this is the original Pro palette, and as you can see, it is a 16 pan palette with a row of mattes on the top and a row of shimmers on the bottom. And this one, it says the total weight is 8.8 grams. The total weight on this is 16 grams. So you are getting more product in these newer ones. These always had smaller pans compared to some other eyeshadow palettes. I think these are quite shallow. I haven't hit pan on these or anything, but these were, I don't know what they were originally priced at. Currently they are around $39, it looks like. These newer ones, this is $35, and these smaller ones are $15. So I think price point wise, these are really good, especially if the formula lives up to it. But anyway, this is the original Pro palette, and then this is the Pro 2. You can see these are quite skinny. And that is what the Pro 2 looked like. The Pro 3. And then finally the Pro 4. I think I actually did a brush swatch video on this one. So if you are curious what this one looks like, my lighting and all that might be slightly different, but if you just want a rough idea, I think you can check that video out. I'll try to link it. So anyway, so they came out with these for Pro palettes, and then they also came out with their Mega Pros, and those tended to be, I think, holiday releases for the most part, and I think I purchased two of those. I think the original Mega Pro, you would think they'd be limited edition if they were holiday releases, but they've kind of brought them back over the years. So the original Mega Pro palette was $59 or is $59 on the LORAC website. It looks like the Mega Pro 3, which I have, is marked down to $29.50. So again, if you are interested in any of those older palettes, they are still available. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of phase those out going forward now that we have this new Pro line. But anyway, so let's look at this Noir palette first. As I said, there are 18 shadows, and the total amount of product you are getting is 16 grams. It looks like this is made in China, has a 12-month date on it. I don't know if that's going to focus or not. And then you see the shades kind of laid out on the back there. And it says, reintroducing our fan favorite Pro palette, now with ever more elevated ingredient technology and a new reusable packaging design, which we will talk about. Reinvented with professional makeup artists, this captivating palette contains 18 rich, celestial tone shades which, together, create an alluringly sultry look, sure to capture the mysterious nature of the midnight sky. From lush mulberries to bold coppers and velvety warm browns, these universally flattering shades are enriched by every skin tone. Cast a majestic light with ultra-glittery shimmers, soak in a divine glow with foiled metallics, or entice with buttery mattes. These ultra-pigmented shadows are as good for the skin as they are gorgeous, with vitamin E, cucumber extract, and shea butter. Paint like a pro, fragrance-free and gluten-free. So it says, customize your palette by rearranging the shades in the order that you prefer. To remove any pan, flip the palette tray outward in order to expose the removable slots underneath. Use the included key to remove the pan from the palette and place it where you like. Replace the shades when you hit the pan and reuse the palette to reduce excess waste. So it says for increased intensity, eyeshadows can be used wet. So we might try that on some of the shimmers. And then I think it just says the same thing in French. So I will just hold that for a second if you want to pause and read it for yourself. Okay, so this has a kind of interesting flap design here. And I guess this is the key. So it has an inner kind of thicker cardboard that some palettes do to kind of protect the shadows. And it looks like these are the ingredients. So, and I guess some of the same language that I just read. Okay, so if you are very concerned about ingredients, I will hold that so you can pause and zoom in, hopefully. It looks like these do include talc and mica. So if you're sensitive to those ingredients, you can know what to look for. So this is the key. And at first I thought this was just extra packaging to kind of keep the palette steady inside the box. So make sure that you don't throw this away. And one thing I did want to mention as well, the original Pro palettes I think all came with the LORAC behind the scenes eye primer. I wonder if, let's see here. Okay, so I think this is still the primer they currently have. It looks like this is a smaller size, I think. This is 5.5 grams or 0.19 ounces. Let's see, the full size is 15.3 grams or 0.53 ounces. So this is roughly, I think, a third of the size of the full size, and the full size is $23, which I think is a fair price for an eye primer. Okay, so I will be using this to swatch the shadows as I usually do. I usually use this primer for all my videos just because I've received so many of them over the years, and it's an easy application for my arm, just the way it squirts out there. So I will be using the primer. Okay, so this is what the palette looks like. It's pretty slim. I thought it would actually be a bit bigger, to be honest. And just to show you compared to the original LORAC eyeshadow, you can see that it is thicker, but it is narrower, I guess, a little bit taller. So just to give you an idea, it's that same kind of soft touch cardboard. I don't mind the packaging. I think it's, you know, pretty travel and storage friendly. Okay, so it does have a mirror, which I will try not to keep in the frame there. One thing I thought was interesting is they have this flap over the shades, which I guess kind of serves the purpose of those plastic inserts. Plus it gives you some shade names, but I think like most people, it's kind of annoying when they bother to name the shades, but then they don't print them on the actual palette. Like, I don't know, printing it on this versus the actual palette, what that really saves them. Okay, so just using a knife. Okay, so those are the shades. And one thing I do with some palettes like this is a pretty good size, so I might just keep this kind of in the palette so that I can know what the shades are called. But to show you the, I guess, technology or the way that they designed this packaging, so this actually flips up. You can see it says Pro there, and then you have these little holes in the back. So kind of similar to like the Natasha Denona palettes, only this is cardboard instead of plastic. And it's an interesting way to do it. I guess with their whole rearranging philosophy, I guess it makes sense why they wouldn't print them on the, you can actually stand it up a little bit if you do it like that. I guess it makes sense to not print them on the packaging. I'm sure this was already in development before Natasha Denona came out with her palette, where there was a little bit of controversy over some of the shades being named crease or transition, where they wouldn't be good crease or transition shades for people of color. And she later said, well, you can pop the shades out and rearrange them. Here, I'll show you. So that is what the back of the Natasha Denona palette looks like. And obviously this is plastic packaging. This palette is also 3, 5, 15. So this one has 6. This has 3 more shadows. I think they're a little bit smaller per pan. I think Natasha Denona is a little bit more luxury. So they're not direct comparisons, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the packaging. And let's go ahead and pop one of these out just to show you. So it doesn't have any kind of label or anything on the back, which is kind of one of my pet peeves when it comes to removable pans. Not that Natasha Denona puts shade names on hers either, I don't think. Let me just... And this key from LORAC doesn't fit through the Natasha Denona hole, if you were curious. All right, so I keep a pin in one of my makeup cups just for this purpose of very carefully pushing through. Oops. Yeah, so the Natasha Denona doesn't have any sort of shade name on the back either. But you can see, I'm sure everyone's seen by now how those shade names are according to where they could be placed on the eye, I should say. Okay, so that's basically the packaging. And one thing I did want to mention is that they sell some of these shades as individuals. They're the Pro Palette Eyeshadow Refills, and those retail for $8 each. They only have 6 shades though. So I don't know if they just picked the 6 shades they thought people would get through the most. From this palette, the shades that you can refill, or if you just wanted to try the formula and you only wanted to purchase one of these shades and then pop it in like a Z palette or some other magnetic palette, you could do that. So you can purchase Stardust as a refill, and you can also purchase Soft Taupe, which is this matte. So this matte and this shimmer or metallic are the 2 that you can purchase as singles. It looks like there are 4 shades from the Soleil palette. However, I did purchase the sparkling palette because I think it contains some of the shades that are in the Soleil palette that you can also purchase as individuals. So we'll take a look at that in a moment. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit of a challenge because there are 6 mattes. So I might just have to, I guess, wipe my brush or my finger off before I do the last one. I will be using the Veramona color switch to clean my brushes in between swatches. I already talked about the LORAC behind the scenes eye primer that I'll be using. I have some makeup wipes and towels to clean my arm off in between. And the brushes I will be using are the Rephr 21. I used to use the MAC, I want to say it was the 242 for the shimmers. I think this is a synthetic brush. one of those flat type shader brushes. And then this is the Rephr number 2. And I will be using this in place of the MAC 239, I think it is. And part of the reason I've switched from MAC brushes to Rephr brushes is, one, the MAC brushes I have, especially the 239, are natural hair, and I think MAC is now entirely synthetic. And I also like that this is an all black ferrule, so it doesn't have any reflection, which may be a silly kind of video related thing, but I find that it's a little distracting if there is that reflection. These brushes are, as I said, from Rephr. I will include a link to them below. I think I purchased both of these from their concept store, which is where you can basically get select brushes for 50% off at whatever given time. I just realized this Rephr doesn't have an accent mark over the E, which is interesting. I think they will be putting their core collection on sale soon. This is the number 3 brush, which you can see has the ferrule, silver ferrule. This is a nice little pencil brush. They do some with the silver ferrules and some with the black ferrules. Some you can purchase in either style. They're cheek brushes that are part of the core collection. This is the number 5 and this is the number 4, kind of your standard angled brush there. So those would be part of it. So this is like the MAC 217. So I think their core collection is the brushes 1 through 5. Anyway, I always get on a tangent when I'm talking about the Rephr brushes, but there you go. Okay, so I'm going to prime. Okay, so let's prime the arm here. Okay, so now that that has had a second or two to set, I'm trying to get my fingers as dry as possible so it doesn't impact the way that the shadows apply. All right, so this first shade, Ecru, they describe as a warm ivory matte. The shades feel very smooth and buttery. The second shade is Soft Taupe, which they describe as a soft, cool matte brown. The next one is Sable, which is a warm, deep brown matte. So maybe I'll just do 3 at a time. Maybe that's going to be easiest. So again, this is Ecru. Seems to have a very slight sheen to it. Soft Taupe. And Sable. So I think those all applied very well. And as far as my lighting today goes, I am filming during the day, but I have some studio lights on that I think are set to about 50% at 4000K for the temperature. And they're not sort of directly shining on my arm. And I have the auto white balance on. So just to give you some sense of what we're dealing with here. The next 3 are Burgundy, which is a reddish plum matte. Smoke, which is a deep ash brown matte. And Ink, which is a jet black, which does seem very pigmented. So those are the last 3 mattes. I think they have a good range of mattes for this palette. Again, this is Burgundy. They do seem very nice and pigmented. Smoke and Ink. So I think one of the things people said about the prior LORAC formula is that it can be kind of a dustier, drier formula. They would say it blended pretty well, but it can, you know, have a little bit more fallout or just be a little bit drier. All right, so those are the 6 mattes using finger swatches over a primer. And going back in with the brush, we have Ecru. Usually I zoom in at the end so you can kind of see how the pans look after. So that seems to apply very smoothly. And for the color switch, you just kind of rub the brush in it, swirl it around, back and forth. All right, soft taupe. I think the brush, I mean, it is a little bit lighter. I think you could probably build the color up if you wanted, but it does seem like these do have a slight sheen to them, which if a soft sheen helps the shadows blend, I'm not mad at it. All right, so this is Sable. Fallout isn't terrible. All right, this next one is Burgundy. This brush, anyway, picks up the product, I think, pretty well. The next one is Smoke. This almost seems to have kind of an olive green undertone to it. And then finally this black called Ink. So you can see a little bit of the powder kind of flicking off, but as far as my kind of work surface here, there isn't a ton of powder. And again, I think maybe you can see just that slight sheen that these shadows have. So try to get those all in frame. Again, the finger ecru, brush ecru, finger soft taupe, brush soft taupe, finger sable, brush sable, finger burgundy, brush burgundy, finger smoke, brush smoke, finger ink, brush ink. So those are the mattes, the first row of this palette. All right, and I already have some shadow on this little wipe, but I like to kind of show you how easy these are to remove if I can. All right, so first row is gone. All right, so using a towel just to kind of make sure that any of the excess moisture is removed, and then going back in with the eyeshadow primer. And I like to use eyeshadow primer, one, because it's giving the shadows the best chance, and I always use an eyeshadow primer, or at least 99% of the time I use an eyeshadow primer, just because shadows are prone to creasing on me. So I figure I might as well get as true an approximation on my arm for what it would look like on my eyes. Okay, so going to the second row, and I guess I'll swatch these 3 at a time as well. The first shade is called White Diamond, and this is described as a sheer sparkle. It's very pretty. Whisper is a soft beige shimmer. This one feels a little thicker in texture, which is interesting. The next one is Primrose, which is a light copper shimmer. It's almost like it takes more work or effort to kind of move your finger around, if that makes any sense, at least compared to the first one. Okay, so Again, this is White Diamond, and this one is Whisper. This one is Primrose. It's very pretty. And I like that even though this is a, I guess, more smoky, cool or neutral toned palette, you still get some kind of warmer shades, which I find can be just a little bit more flattering sometimes. Sometimes a straight kind of black silver type palette can be a little harder to wear. The next shade I just swatched is Lust. That is a caramel shimmer. The next one is Silver Moon, which is a warm pewter. It looks really pretty. And then finally Rendezvous, which is a brown with silver sparkle. So I think the texture does seem to vary a little bit across those shades. I'm not sure if the formula is intentionally different. So that is Lust, Silver Moon, which is really pretty. I like that color. And Rendezvous, which is a little bit kind of, I don't want to say sheer, but it's a little bit thinner, I think, compared to some of these others that are a little bit thicker. Okay, so again, going in with the Rephr 21 into the shade White Diamond. So you can see that's kind of, it almost looks like flecks on the brush there. So this is more of a, I guess, topper shade, I would say. You're not going to get probably full opacity. I will try wetting my brush on some of these, but generally a finger is going to give you as good or better application as a wet brush. So this is the shade Whisper. So yeah, that is not... Okay, so that is Whisper. The next one is Primrose. And I think going back to what I said about it just feeling kind of thicker, like even just putting your finger in, you feel like you have to kind of work a bit. That looks pretty smooth, but it's definitely not as opaque or pigmented. Not pigmented, but not as opaque as the finger swatch. But given the texture of these shadows, it does make sense why a finger would be better. Ooh, look at that. Can you see how kind of crumbly that is? All right, so just try to get some on my brush. Lust. And it almost looks streaky the way, I guess I just got different fragments on my brush, just trying to blend it out. All right, 2 more to go. All right, so this is Silver Moon. And then finally, this one is Rendezvous.
We rendezvous with Rochambeau, consolidate their gifts.
And that one you can see also kind of dug up a lot. I've seen, like with pressed pigment shadows, we get that kind of kick up in the pan, but I think it's a little bit more unusual to get that with a kind of metallic-y shade. They do have a very pretty shine and reflect though. So that is the second row. Try to get it all in the frame. Okay, so let's try some damp swatches here. I have this Tarte Maracuja Miracle Mist setting spray that I'll use to dampen the brush. And I'd like to see how this White Diamond shade does on a damp brush. About the same, really. I'm going to run out of real estate here, but let's try Whisper. I think I can fit it in here. So maybe a little bit better than the dry brush. That's the wet brush, that's the dry brush, and that is the finger. Ultimately, I think a finger is probably going to be your best bet with these. All right, let's try Primrose. If anything, it might just help the formula kind of adhere to the brush better. It's almost like you get 3 separate colors depending on what you use. So I think that's pretty. That is the wet brush for Primrose, that is the dry brush, and that is the finger. I think I'll try to wipe off just the first 3. Some more primer down. I don't know how Shay does her eye swatches. She does a swatch of every color in a palette on her eyes, and even just swatching things on my arm and removing and re-swatching. I'm hoping I don't irritate my arm skin, but you know, the eyelids are much more sensitive. Okay. So let's go in with Lust on a wet brush. This is one of those really kind of crumbly shadows. Oops. All right, so this is Lust finger, this is Lust dry brush, and this is Lust wet. You can see it's almost harder to blend all these little kind of flaky bits. All right, the next one is Silver Moon. And this is the finger, this is the dry, and this is the wet. And then finally, we have the shade Rendezvous, which again is kind of like chunky almost. So I feel like the Rendezvous and Lust shades, you either have to work at them a little bit or just maybe use your finger to kind of go over any chunks. A little bit of kick up around there. So that is the second half of the second row with some wet brush swatches. Going to have to get a new wipe soon. Okay, last row here. Okay, so the first shade is called Stardust, and it is a soft peach with silver sparkle. The next one is Dahlia, which is bronze with pink shimmer. That's another one that feels really creamy. And then the next one is called Whiskey, which is brown with golden shimmer. So that's a really nice kind of antique bronze look. All right, try to give myself enough space here. So again, we have Stardust, which is really pretty, Dahlia, and Whiskey. All very smooth, very pigmented. And then the last three here are Onyx, which is smoky gray shimmer, Majestic, which is gunmetal sparkle, and Black Violet, which is a deep aubergine. So those are the last three. You can definitely see the sparkle come through in some of those. This aubergine almost seems a little bit more matte. Maybe it's the satin. I don't think it's as kind of metallic or foiled as some of the other ones. All right, so again with the brush, this is a dry brush, just making sure. It is a dry brush, so going into Stardust. A little bit chunky like Lust and Rendezvous, but maybe not as bad. All right, so Stardust. You can see that's a little hard to get payoff. You just get a lot of the sparkle, it seems like. Going into Dahlia. Again, a little chunky. Whiskey, which is a little bit easier to apply with a brush, I think, than some of the other shades are. Onyx, so I would say if you want a softer application, a brush will definitely help with that. If you want more color payoff and intensity, I would say use your finger. Majestic. If you don't want to use your finger, if you have nails or that kind of thing, and you want a little bit more than what a damp brush might give you, you can use some of those old like foam applicators, the kind that we used to get in eyeshadow palettes. And either wet or dry. Those will, I guess, approximate a finger more than a brush will. So Majestic, you're getting a lot more of the shimmer, not as much of the underlying color. And then finally, there is Black Violet. Which seems to be about the same as the finger swatch. It's on my wrist, so it's a little bit harder to see. All right, so that is the last row there. And I think we can fit some wet brush swatches in. So going into Stardust, I guess I'll do it on this side. think the primer got up that far. So again, I feel like that's kind of a middle ground between the finger and the dry brush. Going into Dahlia. Let's see, can I squeeze it in here? Pretty similar to the dry. All right, the next shade is Whiskey. Some of these, it almost seems like you're picking up a cream. So I forget what year the first LORAC palette launched. I kind of feel like it was around when the Urban Decay Naked palettes were in their heyday. So I don't know if kind of the industry and the technology has just gone a lot more towards like more silicone heavy shimmers and that sort of thing. If that's where LORAC took this, I feel like these are definitely on the more intense side of that as far as shimmers having a lot of silicone. All right, so I'm going to wipe this off now. Again, this is Stardust Wet, Stardust Finger, Stardust Dry, Dahlia Finger, Dahlia Dry, Dahlia Wet, Whiskey Finger, Whiskey Dry, Whiskey Wet. And these other three I need to swatch wet. All right, putting a little bit more primer down where I wiped it off. This one's almost done. Okay, so this first one here is Onyx with a damp brush, so that would be these two. So that seems to be a little bit better than the dry brush. I'm curious about this next shade, Majestic, how it'll apply damp, since with the dry brush you really just get a lot of the sparkle. Okay, Majestic. So definitely more color there. Still have to kind of build it though. A lot of pretty shine though. All right, and finally, this last shade, Black Violet, which doesn't have a lot of shine or shimmer to it. You can see where I try to build it up, there is a little bit more fallout. Okay. I think this wet brush helps bring out more of the purple. It's a little bit more browny in these ones. Okay, so wet brush, this is Onyx. This is Onyx Finger. This is Onyx Dry. This is Majestic Wet. This is Majestic Finger. This is Majestic Dry. And this is Black Violet Wet. This is Black Violet Finger. And this is Black Violet Dry. So that is the final row here. I'll go ahead and zoom you in so you can see the state of the palette. And again, it was brand new when I opened it. I hadn't swatched it or anything before. So not terrible, but you can see where I kind of dug into some of those shades. So I would say just be careful on some of those more creamy kind of foiled ones like Lust, Rendezvous, and Stardust maybe. So overall, not bad. Again, it's always how it applies on your eyes that ultimately matters, but hopefully these swatches kind of give you an idea of the formula, the color payoff, that sort of thing, and what may be the best application methods to try on your eyelids. So I'm pretty happy with this little palette for $35. I think it's a pretty good value. I guess LORAC was smart to put out an 18 pan palette like this that is below a lot of the competitors like Anastasia, Urban Decay. You get a lot of, I think, bang for your buck with this palette. Okay, so that is the Pro Noir palette. I also have this little guy. Let me zoom you back out here. So this is the Mini Pro Sparkling, and I think I said these were 15. And these are marketed as like a travel-friendly palette, but even this, I think, like I said, I think is pretty travel-friendly. I think if you have, you know, any kind of decent sized makeup bag, that would fit into it. Okay, so I think the information where it's made, all of that will be about the same. Yeah, made in China, 12 month, etc. So this says, get swept up in the romance of this travel-friendly, artist-approved Mini Pro palette featuring LORAC's signature Pro eyeshadow formula. From buttery mattes to ultra glittery shimmers and foiled metallics, this palette achieves the perfect sultry look. Okay, so this is very small. So if you have like a truly micro makeup bag that you want to carry something in, you know, this might be a good addition. And it still has a mirror, which I thought was interesting, and it has a little overleaf. It's not taped down, but those are the shades that you get, and this is the sparkling. There's also a shimmering palette, which I think is a little bit more warm toned, and this doesn't have any kind of flip up or removable pan ability, so keep that in mind. And I think these are 5 grams. So the pans look to be the same size. These have 18 pans and there are 16 grams. All right, so if we have gram per pan. Okay, so let's do 16 divided by 18 is 0.8888888. And if we do, let's see, 5 divided by 6. So there may be a little bit less per pan if I'm doing my math correctly, but I don't think it's drastically different. Okay, so the shades in here, as you may be able to tell, are Nectar, Light Brown, and Mauve. Those are the 3 mattes up at the top. And then on the bottom you have Opal, Aurora, and Cocoa. And the Aurora and Opal shades, so these two, are both in the Soleil palette, and you can also buy those as individuals. And then there are 2 additional mattes that I don't have in either palette that are in the Soleil palette that are also available as individuals, if that helps. Okay, so let's prime up the old arm again. Hopefully I can do this all in one pass. All right, so I just used some of this Sephora Dry Clean Instant Dry Brush Cleaner Spray. I don't know if they still make this or not, but anyway, I think this is a little bit easier or faster than like the MAC or what is it called? Cinema Secrets brush cleaner. So I think the color switch does a pretty good job, but just because I had that really pigmented black and now I'm going into some lighter shades, I wanted to kind of make sure there wasn't any cross-contamination. So going in with my finger swatches first, we have Nectar, which they describe as a light peach matte, Light Brown, which they describe as a soft taupe matte. That one almost has kind of a yellowy type ochre tone to it. And then Mauve, which is a pale lilac matte. This last one seems a little bit drier than the other 2. Okay. So Nectar, it's pretty pigmented really. Light Brown and Mauve. So that one seems a little bit tougher to blend maybe. All right, and then the shimmers here are Opal, which they call a champagne sparkle, really bright. Aurora, which is a soft copper shimmer. And again, I think these two are available as individuals. And that last one is Cocoa, deep brown with pink and purple shimmer. So I think this would be a cute little like stocking stuffer too for the holidays. Or, you know, if you have a gift limit. So those are all really pretty. All right, going in with the same number 2 brush. Maybe I should pick up the rougher set when it goes on sale again. Seems to be applying pretty well though, without any black. So a little bit softer there. It's probably more or better suited for my skin tone to use this as like a crease or transition. So that is Nectar, and then light brown. So I really like this matte formula. I think it'll apply well with brushes on the eye. It'll be very buttery and easy to blend. This last one is Mauve. All right, so that's it for the mattes, and then we have the shimmers. So we have Opal, and then Aurora, I think the way that these apply is pretty similar to the larger palette, so I don't think they skimped on quality or anything with these smaller palettes. And then finally we have Cocoa. Is anyone rewatching Cocoa this Halloween season? Or I should say, is it Dia de los Muertos? Sorry if I butchered that. Okay. I kind of like that sheer, sparkly look in a way. But that is Cocoa. All right, so that is the entirety of this sparkling palette. And I guess I can try some wet brush swatches here. All right, going into Opal. All right, so this is gonna be kind of peppered throughout the mattes, I guess, so I hope that's not too confusing. That is Opal Wet, Opal Finger, and Opal Dry. This next one, Aurora. Ooh, again, you kind of get some of that flakiness. Let's see if I can get this. Yeah, some of these, I think if you're using a wet brush and you're picking up a lot of product, you just have to be aware that you might have to like blend it out, smooth it out. Very pretty though. All right, Cocoa. And, sorry if you can hear my phone going off. All right, so this is Cocoa. All right, so that is Cocoa Wet. And then way down here we have Cocoa Finger and Cocoa Dry Brush. So that is it for this little guy. Again, I'll zoom you in so you can see the damage that has been done. And we'll do the removal here. This is a brand new wipe. All right, so there you have it. So again, just a little size comparison between the sparkling and the noir. I definitely recommend giving either of these palettes a try, or you could even just pick up one of the individuals from the LORAC website. I'm not sure what their free shipping threshold is, but maybe if you're buying some other things from LORAC, you can throw one of those in your cart. And then they also have the larger palette, which I think is $45 for 25 shades. So again, I think the price point on these is really good, but you could even wait until you have an Ulta coupon. I think it would have to be a coupon that allows you to apply it to prestige items, though. I don't think the standard $3.50 off or whatever will work on these, but especially if you had like a 20% off code, that would take this down to $28, which I think is a great deal. So yeah, I recommend that you give these a try. Let me know if you are interested in seeing a video like this for the other palette of this size, the Soleil, or the other mini, the Simmering, or even the larger palette, the Meraki. Let me know if you plan on picking either of these palettes up, or if you still use the old LORAC Pro palettes. If you're still loving those, I'd be interested to hear. But I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.